D&D number 5, Angels in Jesus' Name, Chapter 9. Lizzie leaned her head back against the edge of the tub and let the hot water soothe her aching muscles. Her body hurt all over. She'd washed her hair, scrubbed her body, and now felt too tired to move. Keegan had already showered and run to the Waffle House down the street to pick up some food. She still had a hard time believing the incredible story he told her. It was crazy. Organized crime rings that stole babies, grown adults who had no idea they'd been taken from their real families when they were babies, and now the heartache those families felt will come back again when they discover the truth, and they'll suffer all over again for the lost time. They'll never be able to recover what they lost. It was so sad. At least some of them did recover someone. Sighing, she stood and began toweling off. She finished dressing the same time Keegan came back into the room. She was standing in front of the mirror, combing the tangles out of her hair. Turning, she watched him as he set the food down on the small round table. It smelled wonderful, and Lizzie realized she was famished. She hadn't eaten since lunch with her girls the day before. Smells good. Keegan only nodded his head and cleared his throat. He wanted her right now. It was always like that. He and his buddies joked about it. When they'd been through some horrific episode on the front, the first thing they wanted to do was find a willing female. Using Elizabeth, however, was not his intention. He needed to earn her trust again. He needed to be gentle. She'd listened to everything he'd had to say, but she hadn't said she still loved him. She'd only nodded her head in understanding. She had asked how he truly felt about the girls, and he'd told her he'd loved them as if they were his own. She'd cried then, and when he tried to comfort her, she'd pushed him away. That's when he jumped in the shower and offered to go get some food. Now she stood before the mirror, dressed in some jeans and the bright yellow t-shirt, combing her long wet hair, and he couldn't help but respond. Swallowing hard, he motioned toward the table. I hope you like it. I tried to call you on your cell, but you didn't answer. My cell? He shook his head. Yeah, you know, the one I gave you, the one you left behind yesterday when you went to the store. I put it in your bag. Her brow furrowed. If I'd had it with me, we would have gotten out before those men came. Probably. And you wouldn't have been beat to a pulp and then shot. He shrugged. That's inconsequential. You wouldn't have had to go through what you did. She sighed. Sorry. I'll try to do better. He smiled. Her words told him there would be a future. So, why did you try to call me? To ask what kind of supplies I needed to buy to redo the bandage on my shoulder and to give you a choice on the food. I think I did okay with the medical supplies, and as far as the food, if I recall, you're not very picky. I have patty melts and hash browns scattered and covered. That okay? Yes, and orange soda. I'm in heaven. She sat down. He sat across from her, and they dug in. This is perfect, Lizzie moaned. Greasy and fattening. What could be better? He smiled at her. So, one thing we didn't cover earlier, Elizabeth. Why did you fight me so hard when I tried to get you to come with me? She dabbed some oil from her lips. I came home, and the girls were nowhere in sight. And then I see you standing on the back porch, wearing a gun. That right there made me wary. Next, I overhear your phone conversation, or one side of it anyway. You said something about blonde, blue-eyed babies being worth $5 million per child, and you'd be there to deliver or something like that. I asked you where my girls were, and you said you had to send them away. I freaked. I'm sorry. Well, there's nothing for you to be sorry about. You acted like any mother would have. I'm the one who's sorry. Drawing on the straw, he finished off his soda, making a loud sucking sound, then sat back to watch her eat. She looked up and smiled at him, and he smiled back. His smile was doing things to her insides, especially that dimple, she thought. He looked a little worse for wear, bruises on his face, a small cut on his cheek, and another at the corner of his mouth. It was that rough, roguish quality that made her insides turn somersaults. No, there was no denying she wanted him. Yet at one point yesterday, she'd hated him with her whole heart. Now, knowing the truth of things, it seemed easy enough to forgive because she wanted to forgive, because she wanted him, and because he loved her and her girls. Isn't that what she dreamed of, and more, what she'd prayed for? Frowning, she thought about that dream. It would have to be without her present home. I'm going to sell the house. His eyebrows rose. It was her parents' home, the home she'd grown up in, the only home she and her girls had ever known. Is there no way that you can? Absolutely no way. Leaning forward, he reached out across the table, his palm turned upward. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. Baby, I know I've said it over and over how sorry I am. Still, if I could go back, I don't know what I could have done differently. She shrugged nonchalantly. It doesn't really matter. He looked at her like he didn't believe her, so she went on. The house was old and run down, and I don't know why I didn't think about selling it earlier. It's not like I'm attached to the town. Most everyone there sort of looks down on me anyway. I think Bradley's parents have something to do with that, and I don't care. I'll just start over someplace else. His eyes met hers, his filled with admiration. She may look soft, fragile, sweet, and angelic, but the woman was tough and resilient. You have any idea where you might move? She shook her head. His hand closed firmly around hers. Do you think maybe we could figure it out together? Mouth pressed into a thin line, her eyes moved over his face as she tried to figure out what he meant by that. It almost sounded like a marriage proposal. Almost. If it was, he was going to have to do a whole lot better than that. Sighing, she pulled her hand away. I guess that's a possibility. You certainly know more about the world than I do. I'd appreciate your input. When he didn't correct her that he'd meant more than just a helping hand, Lizzie stood and began clearing away the plastic plates. She threw everything into the carry-out bag he'd come in and placed it near the small trash can. Then she went back to the dressing area and brushed her teeth and washed her hands and face. Keegan moved to the edge of the bed. He needed to get to Savannah, but a few extra days wouldn't hurt. He had enough time to take her down to Pine Forest and drop her off. Maybe he should take her back to Tyler Springs first to get her ban, now that the coast was clear. He'd still escort her down to the girls, and then he'd go to Savannah, take care of business, and hightail it back to her. The thought of being away from her made his insides twist. In his current position, he'd have to leave her constantly when he went on assignment. He'd have to fix that. He watched her put away her creams and hairbrush. He tried to grab everything off her bathroom counter just in case it was something she would need. Apparently he did okay because she hadn't commented on her lack of supplies. She was organizing her suitcase and taking care of business, and it was making him crazy. He was to the breaking point. Elizabeth? She turned. Yes? Standing, he came to her and took her face in his hands. I need to know if you can still love me. I need to know if there's even a chance. As he cupped her face in his rough hands, she reached up and gently ran her fingers along his jaw. I love you, Keegan Tanner. I love you so much it frightens me. Her words brought a smile to his face. Well, don't be afraid, Lisbeth. We'll work everything out, and if we do that, I believe life is about to get really good. They stood there for several seconds, just holding each other's face, gazing into each other's eyes. Slowly, inch by inch, Keegan lowered his head and finally touched his lips to hers, kissing her softly. The relief was immediate. He'd never wanted a mere kiss so much in his entire life. She tasted of salvation, namely, his. That's what she'd been from the very first moment she'd come into his life. She'd turned the hardened government agent he'd become into her Prince Charming, fairy stories and all. She was an angel, too good for him, he knew that, but he craved her, body and soul. Groaning, he edged her toward the bed, and when their legs bumped it, they sat, and Keegan finally pulled away. She couldn't get enough of him and never wanted him to stop kissing her, never wanted to feel the horror of the past 24 hours again. Her heart and body were so overwhelmed, the tears gathered and overflowed, and maybe it was the shock of what she'd just been through, the violence she'd experienced. Maybe it was having to hate someone she loved, even for that small amount of time. Maybe it was knowing what she could have lost. Letting the tears flow freely, she sniffed. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. He bent and kissed her softly, for what you had to witness. Another soft kiss. For what you had to go through. And another one. For everything. He laid on the bed and pulled her into his arms. Lizzie sighed with pleasure. I don't want us to be over. He smiled. We're not finished. Not by a long shot. With that reassurance, she closed her eyes, sleepy and content, but awoke moments later with a start. What was that? Shh, it's okay. It sounds like an afternoon thunderstorm. He rose and walked to the window and pulled aside the curtain. Rain pelted the parking lot, turning everything a dreary gray. He let the curtain go. Maybe we'll order in pizza later. Do you like pizza? Sure, who doesn't like pizza? Pan crust, extra cheese, and a 6-pack of beer. Sounds good. New scene. No! Lizzie cried, her arms and legs fighting against unseen assailants. Strong arms came around her. It's okay, I've got you. I've got you, baby. You were dreaming. Lisbeth? Shh, now. Calming, she snuggled closer, letting her heart slow. Oh, man, that was bad. Dreaming. Lisbeth? Shh, now. Calming, she snuggled closer, letting her heart slow. Oh, man, that was bad. She shuddered. I'm sorry I woke you. He chuckled. She was always so concerned for everyone else. It's all right. Are you okay now? She smiled. Uh-huh. I dreamt those men were following us around and they finally caught us. There was more to it than that, but that's all I can remember. Maybe it was the pizza. Maybe. She jerked when the clap of thunder rattled the window. It's still raining? Apparently. Lizzie ran her hands over her arms. Is the air conditioner still on? Because it's awfully cold in here. Keegan's brow creased. Cold? No, the AC isn't running. He pulled the blanket up over her shoulder and moved close to her. There, is that better? Yes, you're so warm. That's because it's warm in the room. She shivered and he held her closer. A few minutes later, she was sound asleep again. Keegan watched her beautiful face as she slumbered, his need to protect fierce. Considering what she'd been through, she was handling it fairly well. A few nightmares could be expected. During the afternoon, she'd changed the bandage on his shoulder, which he'd gotten wet when he'd taken his shower. Allowing her to take care of him seemed to lift her spirits, and she examined all his cuts and bruises. And then he'd called John on his cell, and Lizzie got to speak with her daughters. She did her best to keep her chin up during the conversation. They were having the time of their lives, and after Lizzie spoke to them, he'd taken the phone and told them a silly story. He was anxious to get her reunited with the girls and get them settled somewhere. Heather was missing school, and the winter holidays were coming. Not a good time to be homeless. He sighed and relaxed from napping and cuddling all afternoon and evening. That, coupled with the energy expended trying to survive and save Elizabeth, he was exhausted. Rolling to his back, he closed his eyes and fell immediately to sleep. New scene. Keegan was jarred from his peaceful slumber when one of his cell phones went off. Cursing as he sprang out of bed, he grabbed the phone. Usually, a late-night call wasn't good. Tanner. Jason Lee here. Yes, sir. Sorry to call you so early. I know it's 4 a.m, but I have information that can't wait. No problem. You've been immensely helpful, as was Jeff. What's up? Agent Tanner, where are you? A small tentacle of worry moved up his spine. I'm in a motel with Elizabeth. We're headed down to Pine Forest tomorrow to join the girls before I go on to Savannah. You're going to have to change course, I'm afraid. And that would be because there's a hit out on you. Silence. Agent Tanner, I thought I took care of that. Well, the hit still stands. They're coming after you. It makes no sense. Why waste a hit on me? I've already told all I know to the authorities. What could they possibly gain? I've turned in so much evidence they don't even need me as a witness. They don't care that you're not needed as a witness. This is personal. Personal? You mean like Hartman is so pissed that he got caught, he put a hit out on the guy that outsmarted him? Yeah, like that, only it wasn't Hartman who ordered it. Salados? Washington? It was Brian Cantrell, your old Quantico buddy. It seems he's more than Hartman's bodyguard. More like a right-hand man, and he wasn't connected to any of the crimes, so he was free and clear to conduct business. Of course, we will have him now on conspiracy to commit murder. The only problem is Nigel sent some guys in to take him, and he was gone. Which means, Keegan surmised, it'll be hell finding him, but you can bet he'll surface when it's time to collect that 25 mil. There's no way they're going to stop that deal. I think that's a fair assumption. Of course, we want the bad guys to think the deal is still on. Right now, though, I'm interested in seeing that you're safe. That shouldn't be your concern, sir. That should be mine and my SO. Nigel is concerned. We've been working hand in hand on this. You'll be hearing from him any time now. Fine, only I'm not worried about me. My concern is for Elizabeth. I need to get her away from me and down with her children. I don't think that's going to be possible. Why not? Keegan snapped. Well, you want the children's whereabouts to remain confidential, and if Mrs. Anderson goes down there, she'll only put the kids in danger because the hit orders include her. Another string of curses. The exact words from the transcript I'm reading are, I want Special Agent Tanner dead and that bitch too. I'm assuming he was referring to Mrs. Anderson. Keegan shook his head. No sense. Why does Cantrell have the hots for me? Hold on a minute. Keegan waited while he heard Jason speaking to someone in the background. Jason came back to the phone. I have some new info that may clear up your confusion. There was a man at Mrs. Anderson's house called Hunter? Yes, I don't know his first name. I killed him before he killed me. His first name is Hunter. His last name is Cantrell. Apparently, they're brothers. Keegan glanced at Elizabeth, running a hand through his hair. He merely hung his head and sighed deeply. Well put. Keegan's mind snapped into survival mode. Elizabeth paid for the room with her debit card, and I paid for pizza with my credit card. Well, you need to leave. Are you still in the car Jeff procured for you? Yes. Good. Unless they've seen you in it, it's not traceable to you, so you're good for now. Don't head south. They'll expect that. Be careful, Agent Tanner. Stay alive until Nigel picks you up and takes you and Elizabeth to a safe house. You mean takes Elizabeth to a safe house. I'm heading to the docks to help stop that shipment. You're no good to anyone dead. Nor am I good hiding away because some dude has a score to settle with me, and judging from what I know of you, you do the same. You might be right. Whatever you need, Agent Tanner, call me. Thank you, sir. Keegan tossed the phone on the dresser, grabbed up his jeans, and started dressing. He'd let Elizabeth sleep as long as possible. 2 seconds later, his other cell phone buzzed. Tanner. You've spoken with Mr. Lee? Nigel Court asked. Yes, Keegan said. He quickly filled him in on the conversation and on the fact that they had to get out of the room now. Be careful, Tanner, Nigel said. Once I spoke with Lee, I called the hospital in Monroe. Someone has already been there asking questions. Get a move on. Head northeast to Athens, then straight to the Athens Police Department. I'll have a chopper there to pick you up and Mrs. Anderson. On my way. Keegan finished dressing and quickly gathered their bags and belongings. Lastly, he went to Elizabeth. Hey, he said softly, brushing her hair out of her face. She turned over and looked up at him with glazed eyes. Elizabeth? She shivered, her breath coming in short gasps. I don't feel too good, she whispered. He laid a hand on her forehead. She was burning up. Could anything else go wrong? Elizabeth, we have to leave, honey. We have to leave now. Her brow furrowed. Those words had been burned into her brain. Why? She asked, sitting up. He sat down beside her. I'm going to ask you to trust me right now. I'll tell you everything later. Right now, we have to get out of here and on the road, okay? She nodded and kicked the covers off. Her body immediately began shivering, almost violently. Between the two of them, they got her shoes on. He turned the lights off in the room and told her to stand still while he opened the door and peered out. There was no one in sight, not a car, not a person. Considering the downpour and the lack of visibility, now was as good a time as any. He dashed out, threw their bags into the trunk, and unlocked the car doors. Running through the torrential rains, he came back for Lizzie. He swiped a pillow and blanket from the bed, took her hand, and ran with her to the car. He didn't breathe again until they'd pulled away and made several turns with no tail. Glancing over at his passenger, though, his heart sank. She was sick. Very sick. She stared out the windshield, her face pale, her body trembling. He grabbed the ends of the blanket and pulled it up around her, then switched on the heater. Try to rest, sweetie. When I feel it safe, I'll find a place to pull over and get some aspirin or something to bring down the fever. Get ibuprofen, she said between clenched teeth. It works better for me. He nodded. It won't be long. She slid down low in her seat and closed her eyes. New scene. Keegan shook his head as he stared at the readout on the thermometer he'd just purchased. He ran his hand down her face. Elizabeth, honey, can you sit up for me and swallow these pills? She moaned, barely lifted her head. He put the pills in her mouth and held her head up while she swallowed a few sips of water. What's my temp? She asked, her voice barely audible. It's 104.2. Even I know that's bad. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, we'll give the Ibs time to work. I probably just have the flu or something. My whole body hurts and my head is pounding. My throat is sore, too. It could be strep. Lord, I hope I didn't get you sick. I never get sick. He held up the bottle of water. You need to drink more. She shook her head. I can't right now. I'll probably just throw it up. I'll try to sip a little more in a few minutes. She was whispering, but he caught the gist of what she said. Pulling the blanket back over her body, he stroked her forehead. He'd moved her to the back seat so she could stretch out. Her skin was terribly hot and dry. I have to keep going, he said softly. Are you going to tell me why we had to leave so fast? He sighed. There's been a hit put out on us, you and me. We had to get out of there quickly. Nigel's coming to take us to a safe house. A hit? You mean like someone's been paid to kill us? You have to be kidding. Unfortunately, I'm not kidding. One of the guys in the organization I've been investigating is mad and wants us dead. Why me? What have I done? It's nothing you've done. It's me. They know I care about you, and the best way to hurt me is to hurt you. And what about the girls? Are they safe? She asked, her voice choking on the sobs welling up in her chest. John and Jody are taking good care of them. I spoke to them a little while ago. The girls are fine. We don't see any way they could be traced down there. However, they won't be safe if you go down there now. So until we're sure you and the girls are safe, you have to let us protect you. I miss them so much. I've never been away from them. I told John that I'd have you call them in the morning. She sniffed. Where are we going? I don't know the answer to that. He wrapped his arms around her. This nightmare is eventually going to end, and you'll be with your girls, and everything is going to be okay. Keegan, she said softly, her hand reaching for his, I'm afraid. Oh, baby, I don't blame you. But please don't be afraid. We'll get this guy. Right now, you just focus on getting well. She nodded. I'm sorry I got sick. Apology accepted, he said with a smile. Now sleep. I'll wake you when we get to Athens. We're not that far away. New scene. I'm telling you that we're not leaving until I've had her checked by a doctor. Her fever is back up to almost 104. Nigel heaved a sigh. All right, we'll take her over to St. Mary's here in Athens. We'll let emergency check her out. If they say she's okay to go, she's going to the safe house. That's all I ask. Her fever's too high. We can't save her life so she can die of some stupid sudden illness. Nigel nodded. Let's get her over there. 30 minutes later, Nigel Court sat watching Keegan speaking with the doctor about Mrs. Elizabeth Anderson. He shook his head. He was losing one of his best field agents to a woman. That was obvious, and it was a shame. He needed Tanner. He had all the savvy needed by an FBI agent. First, he was experienced. Next, he was calm, cool, collected, and deadly. He would see if he could talk some sense into him. Keegan joined him. What did the doc say? Nigel asked. She tested positive on a rapid test for strep, whatever that means. They've started her on antibiotics, and her fever should be down within 24 hours. Can she be moved? Keegan nodded, his lips pressed into a thin line. Yes, we can go. Good, let's do it. A few hours later, Keegan was tucking in the sheet around Lizzie in a comfortable bed in a small 3-bedroom home in the little town of Claxton, Georgia, the home of the popular holiday fruitcakes. Keegan and Lizzie joked about feeling right at home, while he made sure she downed a bowl of soup. Satisfied she was comfortable, he left the room and joined Nigel and two other agents in the small, stark living room. Is she good? Nigel asked. Keegan nodded. She's already feeling better. Nigel nodded at the other agents. You guys want to go get some takeout? Yes, sir, they said in unison, realizing their superior wanted time alone with Agent Tanner. They left quickly. Nigel looked Keegan over. Are you still planning on seeing this assignment through in Savannah? Keegan's eyes narrowed. Of course I am. I'll leave here tomorrow. Good. You'll need transportation and a clean phone. I'll arrange it. Thanks. So, what's the problem? The problem? Yes, Nigel, what's bugging you? Sit down, Keegan. Sighing, he did as ordered. I'm not speaking to you as anything other than a friend right now. Keegan's eyebrows rose. This was a first. Okay. Look, I know I'm usually all business and all about the job, but I'd like to know what your intentions are concerning Mrs. Anderson. Keegan looked down. He figured Nigel had the right to know, especially since Keegan had come close to compromising her while undercover. He looked back up. I'm gonna marry her if she'll have me. Nigel thought, choosing his words carefully. How long was your last assignment? It's 2 long years. And the one before that? 6 months. And before that? Keegan sighed. 6 weeks. And the one before that? 4 months. Get to the point. What kind of life will that be for your wife? I'll change positions. I'll come in from the field. I got lots of guys who can do that. Lots who want to do that. I don't have that many who can handle what you're so good at, Keegan. You'd deny me a transfer? Nigel shook his head. I'd make it hard for you, but I wouldn't deny it. Are you sure that's what you want? When you joined the Bureau, you stated you wanted to be in the field, doing the hard stuff that no one else wanted to do. You wanted to be in the thick of things. Well, circumstances have changed. I was an adrenaline junkie. I've grown up. I've seen too much. My priorities have changed. And Elizabeth Anderson has changed them? Well, she's helped me to see what I want in life. And what is that? A family. This amazing awakening in the few weeks you were at her home. What are you trying to say, Nigel? Just spit it out. Okay. He paused dramatically. You're a killer, Tanner. That's what you do, and you do it well. You're a trained killer. What kind of husband would that make? What kind of father would you be to those little girls? Keegan swallowed, and his face paled. Good grief. You make me out to be some kind of monster. Isn't that what you'd be in their eyes? If they knew the things you've done, how do you think they'd react? If Elizabeth had seen you extract information from some lowlife when you were in Afghanistan, if she'd seen you slit someone's throat, or even if she'd seen the kind of training you've been through in the military, how do you think she would react? I mean, she strikes me as being sort of innocent, but I guess you'd know that better than I. She seems to me, though, to be one of those kinds of women who would cry over the death of a mouse. How would she feel about the lives you've taken? When you touch her, do you think she'll see the loving hands of her husband or hands covered with blood? Keegan remained silent, for he had no answer to the question, or he didn't want to face the answer. We can't help what we are, Agent Tanner, Nigel continued. I'm not saying you're dishonorable or anything like that, but you've taken a certain road, and you can't take back all those things. You even have a degree in criminology. You've been taught to think like the maniacs you helped to capture. Well, I also have a degree in criminal psychology, Nigel. Does that make me a manic depressive or a schizophrenic or any other kind of crazy? No, of course not. Yet you think I'm a criminal because I can think like them? No, and yet you know it's a fine line. Your mind works differently than most civilians, especially those innocents like Lizzie. Keegan silently digested what Nigel was saying. Finally, he looked up. And I am a killer because I have killed. Nigel shrugged. I'm not blaming you, and you shouldn't blame yourself. It couldn't be helped. You've done what had to be done. Keegan rose and went to the window. Nigel went to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Look, maybe someday you'll find the perfect woman. Not one with 5 innocent little girls who hang on your every word. Maybe a woman with her own demanding career, who doesn't care that you're gone for weeks or months at a time. Maybe even one who gets off on the kind of violence that surrounds you every day. Nigel clapped Keegan on the back. It's up to you, of course. However, if I were you, I'd take a long look at the fairy story you're thinking about stepping into and make sure you're not the ogre living under the bridge. Deciding he'd said enough, Nigel made his way to the door. Just think about what I've said. Your car will be here in the morning. Keegan didn't turn around as Nigel left the house. Still standing at the window, he watched him drive away. He wasn't stupid. Nigel Court was all about the job, as he'd said himself, and he was pulling out all the stops to keep from losing Keegan as one of his top agents. He was trying to work his own brand of psychology on Keegan. Still, he'd made some valid points. If Elizabeth knew some of the things he'd done, she'd be repulsed. He himself was repulsed. He was sickened over the men he'd had to kill. The Bureau had assigned him a shrink many times after a kill. Nevertheless, he did what had to be done, as Nigel had pointed out, and in his own defense, he'd luckily never made a bad kill. Never accidentally shot a kid or an innocent bystander. He'd saved innocent lives. Would Elizabeth understand that? He'd killed 2 men right in front of her, and she'd promptly lost her lunch. Quietly, he went to a room and sat down in the chair opposite the bed. He had a lot of thinking to do. And that is the end of chapter 9.